Hey everyone, I'm Rob Galbraith, the author of The End of Insurance as We Know It, which is published through Insurance Nerds. And I'm here today with Pankaj Peshawar, the CEO of Purple Ant and the host of Purple Ponderings, which is seen on the Insurance Nerds YouTube channel. So welcome, Pankaj. How you doing?
Doing good, Rob. Always good to see you. Thank you for this great opportunity to talk about a few things that we both love passionately about.
Yeah, so today Pankaj and I are going to have a conversation about IoT and the role in insurance. And there's been a lot of hype on this topic, and there's certainly a lot of excitement that I think is warranted, but it also hasn't quite gained the foothold yet that I think both Pankaj and I thought that it might when we met a few years ago, and it definitely has not being leveraged to its full potential today. I'll say it that way. And so we wanted to have a dialogue today really on that topic, and we've collaborated together on a white paper that you can get if you go to the Purple App website to download, which I think you'll find of great interest. So Pankaj, I'll kind of let you start off the conversation. Let's see where we want to go. Maybe we want to talk about the current state and then kind of what the possibilities are. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a great you said something that's a great segue, which is, we talked about this topic a few years ago, and really what we saw, what was really lacking, or we saw it as an opportunity at that time was either way you can say it is that the industry pretty much had been doing, making the same decisions around the same functions in similar ways for a long time, right? When we think about underwriting, right, assessing what the risk is, figuring out what the risk mitigation or risk management is all about, right? There was really some, let's say some ways that almost all carriers, whether there was large carriers or mid-sized carriers, they're all doing it the same way until we until we had a chat and we saw some of these newer technologies come around. But let's start by just maybe have you share, because you wrote a book about it, and people, if there's anybody listening to this conversation who still hasn't bought Rob's book, The End of Insurance as We Know It, please do. It's an amazing book that has been acknowledged by everyone within the industry as well as outside the industry as a great one to get a good grip around this interesting industry that we're in. So as you have basically researched and talked about, and you came up with a provocative title because you saw an opportunity. You saw that there was some struggles and constraints, and like the industry had to do something, which is where sort of we also talked about sort of the current state and constraints. So why don't you share some thoughts on what you saw in your research?
Yeah, I'm happy to, Pankaj, and thanks for the kind words on the book. So, the book is really premised on the idea that we still need insurance. So it's titled The End of Insurance, but the as we know it part is just as important as the end of insurance. So what I'm not saying is that insurance is going away. I'm not saying risk and exposure is going away, right? None of that's true. In fact, you could argue that during the time we're recording this in 2020, during the coronavirus pandemic, and we've got hurricane making landfall and all sorts of stuff going on, but there's more risk than ever. Like, we live in this very volatile, chaotic world these days, and so if anything, right, risk is escalated, and people are looking for ways to protect themselves, to build in resilience. And so insurance is still as relevant today as it was over 300 years ago when it first started. I think what has changed is the way that insurance works. It is really a digital first product, and has kind of been wired that way for a long time. I've been reading a book called The Long Tail by Chris Anderson, and he makes this distinction between atoms and bits. And so, right, atoms are physical things, right? Bits are digital in a computer. So what we've seen as kind of trends is that the internet and the change in markets, right? It really first started with music streaming, right? And then it was kind of videos as bandwidth got better and stuff like that. So these things were always data that were always bits. It might have been encoded on a CD in the past, or videotape for those old enough, a VHS tape, right? But it's data fundamentally, and so it can be translated into bits, and it can be, you know, passed around like very, very easily. Where we're starting to see more is the atom pieces, right? So Amazon, right? They still have to physically store the goods, just like Walmart did, just like the local supermarket did, but they do it more efficiently, like online distribution. But there's still the physical goods. There are advances, such as with my book, where it's print on demand now. So there's nobody sitting around with 5,000 copies of the End of Insurance as we know it, just waiting in the warehouse to ship them off. They run them in very small batches. It's essentially print on demand. So until you hit the buy button on Amazon, the book is actually not printed. And the fact that it can be printed and delivered to your doorstep on Amazon Prime in 48 hours is just really, you know, remarkable, and a testament to technology, and that ability to translate, you know, bits kind of into atoms, a physical book. On the insurance side, there isn't that much physical, right? Yes, there's a physical policy that you get, but if you think about it, right, there isn't that much in terms of atoms that's transferred from carriers to agents to the insureds. This is very much about bits. Now, it's confusing. It's a legal contract. It's a financial instrument all rolled into one. There's regulations, right? There's lots of rules around it. So there's complications. Having said that, right, I think insurance is still waiting for its moment. You know, we talk about InsurTech and what it can do, and it's fundamentally, I'm more convinced than ever, it is a paradigm shift. It's just this new world, this you know, connected sensor world that we live in, whether it's telematics, whether it's smart home devices, whether it's wearables, you know, you name it, right? It could be something in the agriculture sector. That's just fundamentally different view of the world than the way that we used to do it. You know, we used to collect the age, gender, marital status of someone to see, you know, well, what should I rate them from a driving? Well, I don't need to do that anymore, right? Age, gender, and marital status doesn't have anything to do with your ability to drive. Now, when I was bucketing people into categories and trying to take a guess at how they drove, because that's all I could do is just guess, I couldn't directly observe their driving behavior, then, you know, that made sense. That was a good proxy. But I don't need to do that anymore. Just like I don't need to know the age of your home or the type of construction, right? Maybe the type of construction a little bit, but certainly the age, right? 20-year-old home may need all its major systems replaced, like the plumbing and the water heaters and the HVAC system, or those things may have already been replaced and it's good for another 20 years. And so I think, you know, what is capable today versus what are people doing is really this fundamental disconnect that I think is interesting to explore.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think those are great points, and I just wanted to share a few things, right? So when I you know started going deeper into sort of the startup world, and you know it helped me get outside of what I was doing for a long time before that, I realized that, you know, you mentioned insurance started 300 years ago, right? And for pretty much all of these many years, the whole premise has been, should something happen to you, we'll cover it. Okay, that's been the premise, which means that it's a very reaction-centric business operating model. Now, you've improved certain things as you've gone along, but essentially the basic premise has been that because of regulations, you have to buy. So the, you know, the premium dollars will come in, distribution, the agents will send the, you know, customers coming in, but then all we need to do is have claims call centers ready, so that if a claim happens, we'll interact with the, you know, policyholder or the insured, or go back to them at the time of renewal. Right? That's about it. Those are the, that's how the entire workflow was set up. And of course, along the way, you're doing the underwriting and the pricing based on the, you know, the historical data, like that's been collected and covered from a long, long time. And I felt the first thing was that it truly hadn't manifested itself from a, you know, protection perspective, which is what insurance actually means, right? There's a positive element of the word insurance as I saw it, which is, how do I protect you? How do I just make sure that you never have to actually need my product? Because if that happens, if prevention happens, everybody benefits. Like the insurance companies do benefit if there are no claims. The insured benefits if that, when there are no claims. So that was kind of the fascinating first thing that was a like aha moment for me in terms of interesting observation. The second one was that as a result of that, insurance as a product, I'm not sure if the product experience, and basically because of Amazon and a lot of these consumer companies that have really taken consumer experience to the other extreme, insurance companies that still not sort of fine-tuned that consumer customer engagement, customer interaction in that realm, right? So it was a big gap between what you would expect when you would interact with someone like a retail company like Amazon, for example, or Apple, for that matter, or and an insurance company. So that was a kind of the second disconnect that I had. Is true. There is a real opportunity. Not to say that um, it is what it was, but I saw that as again another opportunity, that another aha moment, that look, if something like an insurance product could also be improved upon. And I think if you see a lot of insurtechs, and we can talk about that forever, but the common thing, if with all these unicorn companies as they come out, right, and we can name 7 or 8 of them, is the customer engagement, intuitiveness, ease of use, simplicity aspect of the product, right, that give the customers what they want and how they want. So I think I just wanted to kind of, as we've seen now these, as we've seen those, as I saw those, uh, gaps, so to say, and then we see these opportunity with, sensors and AI and ML, sort of the technology, emerging technology as a new tool to now solve, the old world business problem. There seem to be a tremendous opportunity, right? So that is a good segue into the next section, which is sort of, there's the old way of doing things, which we, agree there are some gaps. And then you have these new technologies that have come in. Of course, technology by itself is not going to solve anything, right? So you also have to apply. So